Welcome, everybody, to the Seasons Leadership Podcast, where we are committed to leaders everywhere at all levels who want to make progress on their leadership journey. We will bring you actionable advice to improve your leadership and life today.
Thank you for joining us. At Seasons Leadership, we share a vision to make excellent leadership the worldwide standard. Learn more at seasonsleadership.com.
Welcome to all of our Seasons Leadership Podcast listeners. Today we have the honor of having Kristen Bruner from Huron with us today. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here with you both.
Why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first, again, let me thank you both for having me. It's as I mentioned, I'm a little nervous, right? You have so many great names and so many great perspectives that you've already had shared. I'll endeavor to do my best. From a background perspective, I'll just keep it short. I've spent a very long time in human resources, and many of those working with both of you at the Boeing Company, where I think certainly seminal in terms of my development and understanding of what it means to do great things and build great products, but learn sort of foundational elements of project, business, operations, in addition to human resources. So spent nearly 20 years with the Boeing Company, and before that had lots of different size, smaller company, HR, sort of, generalist roles. Loved my time spending with that company. Spent a little bit of time at W.L. Gore & Associates as their Chief Human Resources Officer and Communications Officer, and now I am with Huron Consulting Group. My first time working in professional services. Personally, I'm married. I have two wonderful sons who one just graduated college, which seems impossible. And one who is a sophomore who just transferred to a school in Southern California and is doing a great job getting acclimated to his new surroundings. I am married to my best friend, Stephen, and I have a golden retriever who is the love of my life. His name's Baron, but we all call him Schmoops. Maybe one fun fact, I know you two know it, having worked with me. I'm incredibly tall, which as I was re-listening to your podcast on executive presence, and by the way, bland clothing, I still wear them. I do think it's helpful because generally speaking, my presence comes into the room oftentimes maybe before I enter the room. And so it's nice to balance all of that out. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that about the executive presence comment, especially, Kristen, because I remember meeting you, of course, but I also remember the first time my husband got the opportunity to meet you, and he went to the door to answer it like at his eye level, and he's 6 foot tall, and then he went, "Oh wow, you're tall."
Get that
the
a lot.
first time you met you.
I do get that a lot. And it does sort of create some just generally strange energy sometimes, like in the wild. But I've learned to just sort of roll with it.
It's kind of the other side of Susan's told stories before about executive presence and, taking up your space and being fully present. And sometimes you have to wear, different clothing or different accessories or do your hair a certain way or something to help you with that. And it's really interesting, the juxtaposition of no, but if you're really tall and your presence centers first, how do you then balance that out so that it's not overwhelming? So maybe it's about managing your presence.
I think so. And I think, when we're all earlier in our career, our energy is sort of, pinging all over the place. Maybe we haven't quite harnessed it as adroitly or as elegantly as any of us would like. I think certainly as I've grown and matured in my career, I'd like to think I've gotten better in that and more comfortable in it too. And you have to do it in a way that also doesn't dim your light. It's not about sort of dumbing it down or taking up less presence. It's just about being choiceful and very intentional about the space and the presence and the energy you do take.
Love that.
I love this conversation, and I know we weren't going to talk about this, but maybe we can come back and really deep dive this, because the reason why I love this is I'm a big minimizer. That's what if I'm not thinking, I will minimize my presence. And I think it was just how I was socialized. Be nice, you're a girl, don't take up too much space, all of that stuff. So just unconsciously I'll jump to that. And I'm at average height. So I fell naturally into that. So how I always wanted to be tall. And so how different of a life experience you have. And I think it would be really interesting to deep dive it.
We could, certainly, whenever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but for now,
Yeah.
we're talking about leadership.
Let's do it.
What does excellent leadership mean to you?
When I was thinking about today, the first thing that comes to me, and Deb, you'll totally get it right. You'll know exactly where all of this came from, since we've spent so many years sort of weaving lives together and having such great experiences. Leadership for me, I think, is about creating the space for others to be the best version of themselves. And that could be in the way they turn in work, the way they live their life, the sense of belonging or purpose we help them create. But I think for me, ultimately, as I've thought a lot, and a lot of what I do every day is about leadership development, leadership assessment, succession planning, talent, hiring, incentive planning, all of the things. But for me, it's really about making sure that we're creating leaders who know themselves, right? The self is the instrument, and making it okay for not only for you to know yourself and learn how to take care of yourself, but through that, learn how to create space, small teams, big teams, organizations, depending on your remit, for others. So it's really about, continuous learning, being curious, listening, having a growth mindset, all of those things that we hear a lot, but it's about creating that opportunity for all of us as leaders to do that for ourselves so that we can do it for others. That's I would say this is hours, but that's the short answer to get us started.
Always ends up that the devil's in the details. And I'm going to defer the next question to Susan, because before we got on with you, she came up with a good thing that she was really curious about, and you are the perfect person to answer it. So
Oh, this
Susan.
is a bit of a zinger. Go for it.
I know it. Yeah. Keep you on your toes, Kristen. So I am curious about human resources.
Okay.
And how that function or role impacts the leadership of a company, or a culture, and how you have been in it all these years.
Yeah.
What motivates you in HR to keep showing up over and over again? What is it that you're doing?
Well, let me start with what motivates me, and then I'll come to the what are we doing? I would say the thing for me that motivates me is about the opportunity to create human organizations in whatever industry you exist in, whether you're building airplanes or satellites or other things. In the industry I'm in right now, which is professional services, which, if you think, and I mean this right and not so quite transactional way, our people are our product. Right, we don't have an inventory of widgets. We don't own, huge factories and real estate. So for me, every day, every single day, all around the world, because we're a global company, I think about the experience that every one of our employees had, and did we do enough as leaders, and did we do enough organizationally to get them to come back in the morning? So that's the motivation, that's the purpose. And what do we do? There's a lot of things in there, and I would say in this role at Huron, and I certainly had it as in different, various assignments inside of Boeing as well. But let me concentrate on this opportunity at Huron. I'm really grateful to work with a leader who understands the value of the culture, how leaders lead, and how work gets created, purpose, design, all of those things. And if you have that, then all the rest eventually sort of flows to where it needs to be. So whether you're doing employee relations, I've got a great employee relations center in this team, and they are at the nexus of employees needing help, leaders needing help, performance challenges, all of the things that can be a little bit messy, but they have a mandate for humanity, right? Curating that experience for our employees, finding truth, building faith, really making sure that the way we do all the things we're supposed to be doing, right? So they're at the center of our values, our leadership principles, and the way that shows up in some place, for some of our employees day to day. There's a myriad of other things that we do, and a lot of them transactional, right? So are we, rewarding people in the right way? Are we attracting candidates in the right way? Are we engaging employees and taking the right actions as leaders? But the thing about HR is I can't do that for other people. I have to influence, and not when I say I the function, all of us in human resources. I've got to encourage other leaders to want to be their best self as well. So I either have to teach them, grow them, develop them, set the right expectations for them, and then make sure that we have the right accountability systems and that they're excited, right? That they understand the expectations of who we are as a company and what we want that day-to-day work to look like. So that could be engagement planning, comp planning, internal mobility, right? Changing people in their jobs, and everything in between. Then there's all the executive stuff, the succession management, the org design, but it's all about the humanity and making sure that the way that we're designing the work creates the best possible experience for our employees so that they get to go on and do great things. Does that help?
Oh my goodness. It seems like you really have you're mission driven, maybe,
Certainly.
personally.
Yes.
And if all companies followed this mission, I mean, the world would be a better place. I mean, can you imagine
But
everybody?
that's the dream, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why I get up every single day.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like though, with all those lists of things, I was like, oh my gosh, when does she sleep?
Well, you gotta have a great team, right? I mean, I say I, but I as sort of the de facto human representing the function. And I do, I have a great team and they get it and they stand on that, in that breach every single day to support and balance and drive and push and do all the things that we need to make sure we're really curating that experience for Huron team members.
Yeah, thank you for that. That does help.
Sure.
Wow. There's been so many things already that we could like deep dive into every single one of them. It would be amazing. But just so we can get some breadth in this conversation, that short time we have with you today, Kristen, and then maybe we'll have you back for more in-depth conversations on pointed topics. So Susan talked about that you seemed mission driven personally, and you agreed with that comment. Now, how do you, there's a two-part question here.
Okay.
What do you find most challenging about that? And what are you most passionate about with that? So two sides to that.
So let me start with a passionate, and I think that's evolved over time. I mean, certainly that space, I am currently passionate about individual self as leaders, not just the self-awareness piece, right? How do we help people really understand themselves more? For us OD geeks, we would say, making that Johari window, unknown to self, known to others, smaller. How do we contribute in a positive way to that, right? It's not about zinging anyone or ripping their soul out of their body with feedback, but it's really about, right? Like you have to know because it can get in the way if you don't. So I think that's what I'm passionate about. The other piece I'm passionate about is the individual in terms of taking care of self. It's not something I do very well. I can conceptualize it, and I find it very difficult to stay consistent so that I can be my best self for others around me. So that's my own work, and I think that informs my passion. So I would say that. I think what can be challenging around that is, and this has certainly been something my entire life, and I don't think I'll ever, quote unquote, fix it, but I've certainly learned to manage it, is the pace that I like to go can often be faster than maybe, the adoption of others. And what I've had to learn over time is it's not about my pace, it's about creating the right pace for others so that it is theirs. And that took me a long time to get to, right? I mean, achievement, all of those things are sort of wrapped up into that. But I really had to learn how to reframe what achievement means. And achievement means a great experience the best benefit for as many around me as I can, create and contribute, versus the need to be right, all of those things, and learning how to put those away. Because if you don't, right, then you're working the wrong problem and you're not as effective for the enterprise and for the people around you that you need to be.
I love that. I love that. So in your eternal quest for self-care, which by the way, makes you 100% normal, because most of the leaders we talk to, I would say all of the leaders we talk to, struggle with that, struggle with, yeah, but if I'm taking time out for me, then I'm taking time away from somebody else. And so they struggle with that thing. What's something that you're doing or you're excited about in self-care?
Okay, so I have to say I'm in love with the glucose goddess. And the reason is, right, I still travel a lot for work. And so I need first of all, I love a life hack too. So in the spirit of these are life hacks, she does a great job really breaking down into simple, easily managed and applied, she calls them hacks, that when I'm on the road, wherever I am, I can follow them. I have complete control. I have to make a big proclamation about it. Nobody needs to know I'm doing it. And at the same time, it really helps me make sure that I'm as healthy and sort of well and strong as I need to be. Um, there's a couple other things in there, always about in the sort of the same space. Tignum's book, Sink, Float, Swim. I'm constantly asking myself, am I sinking? Am I floating? Or am I swimming? I love that because it really brings all of this together for me to make sure that, am I spending the time in the right way that I need to be? And am I investing in myself in the right way? So again, I'm the healthiest, strongest version, not just for myself in the life that I lead, but in this purpose-filled remit that I have, whether I'm volunteering or working or my family or my community or whatever. Those are the things I'm really passionate about. But the glucose goddess for sure, because she's pretty amazing.
I love her too. I think she is amazing. And she has the science too, which I really love.
Exactly. And her story is so compelling because she didn't start as a bio researcher, right? She didn't start as a someone who's into this biochemistry space. She actually had, sort of a personal situation that caused her to really have to look at her own moods, her own health, her own wellness. And it really made me think, I've got all these great things, right? I live a life and I recognize it of abundance and I'm grateful for it. And look at what this other human being did. And these are small hacks that I can make to make myself feel better and help more people around me. I can do that.
Helps you achieve your mission, right?
It does. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. So I want to just kind of tag on to this idea. So we always like to ask leaders for actionable advice.
Mm.
So can you give us some leadership hacks in the spirit of the glucose goddess that leaders can adapt to, and easy or something that works?
Sure. Well, really, for me, I would say that it's probably two from a personal perspective. And one is scheduling the time. If it's on, I have one calendar. So if it's on my calendar, I will get it done. If I don't put it, which is so silly, right? It's so simple. And yet there's a million things already in my mind. The to-do list it feels great to check things off, but then if I check 10 things off, 10 things more, 15 more things are already on it. So if it's on my calendar, I will get it done in terms of, exercise. So for me, it's about making sure I'm managing my time so that I can put it where it needs to be. And, it's really just, I think, of pretty simple things like meal prep. So if I'm home, like not traveling this week, making sure that I have good, healthy lunches available. If I don't do that, I immediately move to sugar and caffeine, and I'm chasing the week immediately after that.
Mhm.
So for me, it's hacks like that, and it could just be. It doesn't have to be super gourmet. It could be, I make enough on Sunday and eat it the rest of the week, which is not necessarily super sexy, you know, to have pot roast or something, but you know, it does the trick, right? I get the protein I need. I know I've got some vegetables and I don't have to sweat it. I don't need a huge chunk of my calendar time between meetings or work where I've got to go prepare something. So that's one for me. Um, you know, and I would, it's really for me also about time. So, you know, Deb, I know you know this. Susan, I don't know if you ever did this when we were, you know, working together previously, that weekly review. I still do that religiously every single week,
Yes.
you know, and one of those questions is, how are you spending your time? Is
Yeah.
it serving you? And I think I've learned to realize over time that that question is more important to me than, not that they're all not important, but that one has grown in importance to me. I think I probably earlier in my life gave that a little bit more lip service, but I really tend to focus 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks scheduling my exercise, especially if I'm going to be on the road. So it's all about, for me, investing in those couple routines, those hacks that I know will keep me focused. And then also making sure that I'm really ruthlessly organizing my time and holding myself to it.
That's wonderful. I still use the weekly review religiously as well. I mean, it's just something that helps me. And if I don't have it, I'm hurting status actually, because I'm like, oh, I know I've got something else on the calendar, but I got to do all these things. But
And the
I
weight
get
you
totally.
carry around of like all, you know, the 10,000 pieces of paper and the email that didn't get processed. It's like the psychological weight of that, like, oh, what was that thing I was supposed to get done? It's just, it's so much easier when it's like I've organized it. I've spent some time getting myself like all the things down, making sure I have everything accounted for that I, right, have in front of me. And now I just need to go execute and I can spend my time, right, organized and getting it done, as opposed to what was that thing and holding on to that and the stress of that at 11:30 at night when you've finally fallen asleep and then you wake back up because you didn't. Oh, no more.
Guess what?
I
Doesn't
say
serve me.
no.
Well, it's just, it's not doing it, I think, is just puts more chaos in our lives. And so we're busy, 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 busy,
Yep.
but not necessarily spending our time on the things that are important. And it is a spiral down, you
It
know,
can
and
be.
it's really hard to feel in control that way.
And I would say this is often what I get asked about, or what I respond with when people come to me and say, hey, you know, can I have a coaching conversation? Or we call them coffee chats for especially new leaders. I will constantly say, run your calendar or your calendar will run you.
Yeah.
And I think those are probably some of the truest words for me that I didn't learn early enough in my career. One of those like, oh, dang it, if I had just learned that sooner.
Yeah.
But right, it's now an integral part of my every single week.
Yeah. You know,
And so helpful.
it
So
is, well, you know, I'm just thinking of, because I have that conversation with a lot of the people that I coach as well. And it's funny to me because there's a lot of resistance actually to it. You know, you think like, what is the resistance? And I think especially as people are expanding their roles, for a while, you actually can run your life in your head.
yeah,
And so, and
depending on the size of your role, sure.
no, totally. You know, you can, and you're successful. And so you've already done it and you've got those habits in place. And so, but then as you get more responsibilities, life gets more complex. There's other people involved. It's just, you cannot keep all those balls in the air.
No, you cannot.
And
No,
that's when people come for coaching because they're dropping balls and they don't know what to do. And so,
I would agree.
yeah.
And they're often resistant because they can't believe it's that simple.
It's totally,
We
totally.
need to use Kristen's phrase, run your calendar, your calendar will run you. They're like, yeah, what else? Because it can't be that easy.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy.
That's exactly right. Because it also gives you, you know, and I know we were talking about executive presence earlier, it's also just that confidence of like, I've got this.
Right.
You know, as your remit gets bigger, you move away from, you know, we all think like, oh, if I just get to this level, I'll be the one. And it's like, you're never the one. There's no one, right? Wherever there is no there.
Yeah.
And you're right, you have all this incoming that you've got to process and manage. And if you don't have a system that helps you process information, but also a system that helps you manage your time, it's impossible. And again, your point, if you've got, a complex sort of personal life and just multiple incomings in that space, it's, it's darn near impossible.
Absolutely. I maybe a small segue for that is you mentioned earlier that it's the team you have around you have a great team and doing all this stuff. How do you as a leader stay in communication with your team and stay connected with your team so that everybody's on the same page and rowing the same direction?
I think it's hard. And I think it's gotten harder to a certain degree, in this distributed environment we're working in. And I just, let me say, that is not a commentary about preference. I know the three of us worked in a globally distributed environment before this was ever a thing, right? Before the pandemic, before. And I think, but now I do feel like, though, there is something missing. And so I spend a lot of time trying to IM folks, checking in, how's it going? What, like water cooler check-ins, like, oh, you're in the canteen. Hey, how's that thing going? Texts. It's, really, for me, it's again part of that weekly review. Is there anyone I need to recognize? Is there anyone I need to reach out to that I haven't talked with in a while? And then I, largely informed by experiences, I would say, earlier in my career, where I had leaders who would constantly move their calendar all the time. Deb, I know you know. And it was hard. You just whipsaw everybody around when you're constantly moving, like one-on-ones and tag ups, and not good. Look, it's not that it doesn't happen, but I really try, to the extent that I can, to hold space, right? Keep things that, if we meet Tuesdays at 1, we do everything we can to keep that Tuesday at 1, whether we need the time, we don't need the time. I like consistency, stability, right? I like those things because I think it brings our best self forward. So I'm known for, texts and IMs and cards home. And if I think someone did a great job, or I think they're having a hard day, honestly, I had a discussion with someone a couple Friday nights ago, and I was just really frustrated about something. And I just felt like I didn't show up like my best self. And it was a Friday night. And so I actually sent them some treats to their home, with not an apology, but like, hey, nobody needs that on a Friday night. Like, let's sweeten up. Let's remember this with more sweetness. And just took it. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing, and they didn't notice it, but I didn't like how it felt. So, just silly things like that to try to keep that connection, keep us touching, sort of, with, I don't mean that like physically, but just like connected in many ways, personally as well as professionally, because it can't just always be about work, right? It just can't. Then that's clinical and it's sterile, and at the end of the day, that just doesn't work.
No, it feels more transactional, as you were saying earlier, rather
and you feel
than
expendable,
human.
right?
The other thing that you've touched on, but you didn't say, that I feel very passionate about, is that being a leader, either in a big corporation or even a small business, it doesn't matter. But we have a responsibility to the people who work with us and for us. And when you said, by moving your calendar around, your whipsawing the whole organization, what you say really matters. And if you're having a bad day, that shadow goes everywhere. And so what I really appreciate from what you said, and I just want to acknowledge it because I think it's so important for leaders to know, is that you feel that responsibility and you respect the people around you to be the best you can be. We're not perfect, but it seems like so many leaders are oblivious to that, and they're almost like celebrities that we have to handle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a podcast in and of itself, right? Like, I don't think some of the people that we currently hold up as celebrities or whose opinions we listen to on things for which they are not at all right informed or educated in a way that makes them a professional in that space, I find curious, and I'll set that to the side.
Yeah.
However, I do think this is a privilege and not a right to be a leader. And I do think, back to the first question you asked me about what is leadership, right? I think that's the most important thing, is getting to really understand that's how you get work done, is with and through others, right? We all want to be successful, and it's creating that. I'm no longer the doer. Sure, I'm a doer in some spaces, but at the end of the day, my ability to sort of engage and pull all the people around me with me is where my value is, irrespective of my function. By the way, it just so happens that I'm in human resources, but I'm a business leader solving business problems, and my function just happens to be human resources. And that might be a little bit of a different way to look at it. But at the end of the day, Susan, you're absolutely right. We choose to be leaders. And I think people who don't want to do it should choose other things. Be a great individual contributor. That's wonderful. And there's spaces for that. But this, you're influencing people's lives. I think it should be that seminal when you agree to go into leadership, or when you contemplate it.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I just, that can trigger me, because I see so many examples of people not honoring the leadership that they have. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of like oh, I've arrived. I'm at a certain level. Therefore, I must be the authority on everything. Ask the last question, and you must listen to me and go along with what I say. And that's not. Susan and I are both very passionate about this. This is not what leadership is. And our version of leadership is much more aligned to what you said, Kristen. And I appreciate that about you, that you recognize that responsibility and accept it, and call people out about, hey, if you're not going to recognize and accept it, then maybe choose a different path.
And it's okay. One is not better than the other at all. I do
They're
think
different.
I think you have to honor it. I think you have to just, right? Like, there's certain careers I just don't want to do, not because they're bad careers. I'm just not wired that way. And it's okay. Just, this goes back to that self-awareness. You got to know yourself and know, how do you bring all of the greatness that you innately have? How do you bring that into your life and your work? I think leadership has to be part. If it's going to be part of it, then you've got to be willing to go here.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Susan, do you have any last questions for Kristen before I ask the penultimate one?
I want to ask something fun. Let's see. Can you think of something fun? Let's see.
Don't ask that. She knows way too much about me.
I was going to say, I can think of lots of fun things.
Don't do that.
Do you have something fun planned between now and maybe next summer?
Do I have something fun planned? I travel so much. And with both of my kids having been in college, we're stuck in terms of when we can travel. I am looking forward to sort of one of those post-graduation, everybody together, couple week-long trips. My husband just sent me sort of an interesting train in Peru sort of thing. So we're contemplating one of those kinds of big trips. It's been a while since we've done one.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
Kind of crazy, right? Like
Yeah.
not on the beaten path sort of trips.
No, those are the best kind. I think they fill our souls with something new, and that you don't see every day.
I agree. And I feel lucky that I have a family who likes to do all kinds of things all around the world. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll get that on the books.
Good. I think you and Stephen get some credit for that, since you raised them that way.
Well, thank you. I think, but they have to want to go there. I mean, like, you can point them in the direction or say, look at all these great things, but they've got to want to go there. And I have, 2 kids who have traveled extensively, and I think are all the better for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Okay, so Kristen, any last thoughts? What would you like to leave with our listeners about leadership, about life, whatever you want?
That's the penultimate question. I would just say be the leader that people remember and want to emulate when asked. Don't be the leader who people choose to want to do the opposite as they themselves become a leader. What I mean is, I can reflect on lots of leadership development that I've had. And the question always is, right? Think of a leader, and then a question comes after that. In my experience, I've had some wonderful leaders, people who were so different from me, but really pushed me to think in certain ways or evaluate different approaches and styles. I think about my own style when I started versus my style and the way I show up now. And I credit a lot of that to some of the really exceptional leaders I've had along the way. And I also credit it to having experiences where I remember feeling, I will never do that to people the way you just did that to me. And that's my wish for all of us as leaders, is to be the former and not the example of the latter.
I love it.
That's good.
I love it. Okay, so how can people get a hold of you if they want to follow you or hear more about your wisdom on leadership?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm glad you think I have some. Obviously on LinkedIn, Kristen Bruner. So please, give me a follow, reach out. Also Huron, we have access anyone. If you'd like to, you can come in through the website. And then my email is Kristen kbruner@hcg.com. So love to hear from anyone and everyone on this topic or any other.
That's great. Well, we'll have all your information on the show notes so people will be able to find you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you both again.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. We've had such a great time talking with you. It went really quickly.
It did go fast.
And hopefully all nerves are gone at this point, right?
All nerves are gone. They were the moment, right, we hit record. It's so good to be with you both.
Good.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. We hope that you were inspired by this conversation.
And we invite you to join our community on Patreon. See the link below. There you will find more resources to help you on your leadership journey.
Make sure to join us next time for more conversation about leadership excellence.